That's actually the secret of my success, is when I'm in those calls, when I'm in those meetings, I'm fully there 100%. Nothing else sort of exists.
Hi, I'm Karl.
And I'm Danielle.
And this is Productly Speaking.
We're product managers by trade, and here we explore the world of product management, its people, and their stories.
We promise to keep it entertaining, and maybe you'll learn something. Shall we give this a go?
Let's do it.
On today's episode, we are going to discuss the signal-to-noise ratio and how to make sure you cut through the noise to get to the signal.
You often get input from customers on what they think needs to be changed in a product. This can raise questions like, how do you know if the feedback is truly a need or a want? How do you know if an individual's feedback represents their whole organization or just their own personal views? Today, we hope to give you some ideas on how to start answering these questions in your particular situation. And to help us do that, we have a guest.
I'd like to introduce our guest today. She is not a product manager, but serves as a senior manager of technical account managers working with telecommunications customers at Red Hat. She has the unique skill of being able to listen to what a customer says they want, and to then ask the right questions and lead the right conversation to understand if that's what they truly need. This is one of those skills that you can only learn from experience, and it serves her well in her role, but would also serve anyone well in a product manager role. In fact, at one point, she almost became a product manager. We are pleased to welcome to Productly Speaking, Jennifer Scalf.
Thank you. In addition, I'd like to add, I've been in a place between the products and the customers for going on 20-some years now. The interesting bit about that is it has been a ride figuring out not only what the customer needs based off of what they're saying, but what they need based off of what we also can provide in whatever product I'm supporting. So I am usually in what is called now, I guess, day 1, day 2. I think it was called DevOps when I started 20 years ago. We were just sysadmins. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm very happy to be here and share some of my experiences, and hopefully folks can pull some learning from it and apply it to your gigs.
Yeah, so you and I have worked together at Red Hat prior, and before that you were at Rutgers. At Red Hat, I observed you taking customer feedback, doing just that, sorting the signal from the noise and distilling it down to a real customer need. Could you share your approach and what that journey has looked like to get to that point?
I highly recommend right off the bat, and something that I do without even thinking about it, is the research ahead of time to understand. And again, I'm in a position where there's already usually a problem happening, something they've installed something, they've set something up, they've architected something. And so what is it that they already have? Collect that from all of the people around you. Don't discount any of the other roles that have interacted with the customer. Make sure you meet with all of those various folks, understand their objectives inside of either your company, their company, etc. So you do a bit of research on that. You do a bit of research on the technology itself. That's the starting point. So you do not ever want to go into any of these conversations without having some background that you definitely want to pull from when you're talking to the customer. So you want to show really fast that you care enough that you've done that. You've talked to every single person that they could have talked to inside of your company before you get in front of them. It's a level of respect, I believe. Also, you don't want to waste anyone's time. If you do not feel that you have the technical skill set, then find folks, even if they haven't interacted with the customer, find folks within your organization that do. Take them out to lunch, just have a nice relaxing, you don't have to go really, really deep, but pick up enough about the casual way folks talk about whatever that technology is ahead of time so that you can also do that when you go in front of the customer. These are a lot of like seemingly random things that I just do naturally. My first gut feeling is, okay, I know there is a significant challenge that needs to be solved. They wouldn't be asking me to come and talk to the customer if there wasn't. I've just gotten to that point. But even if it is something small, even if it is one case that came in and it seems important, having that background ahead of time, definitely. Because when you walk in there, you are going to have to very quickly, or when you get on the phone, you're going to have to very quickly build rapport and trust. And you do not want somebody thinking that you are learning on your feet right then and there, that either the technology, the issue that they're having, any of that. So use all the resources that you have. Heck, go out onto the various socials and look people up, anything you can do.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Certainly going into a call with as much knowledge as you can possibly have is definitely going to set you up in a better spot. But I would have to argue that it's not possible to go into every call with all the knowledge that you need for every call. So what do you do when you get into these situations where you're being asked a question or the topic goes into an area where you may not know, but yet here you are, you're on that call?
Yeah, you could go both, or you could have data overload, or you can go in with absolutely no prior knowledge. If you go in with absolutely no prior knowledge, be honest. So, one of the most important things I found is the extreme authenticity. So, go in there. The first thing you need to do if you do not know the technology, don't know the background, is you need to get the folks you're talking to understand that you believe them. You believe them. They're telling you they're having an issue. They're explaining the problem in great detail or not, but they have a problem and they want people to believe that they do right off the bat. So you need to make sure within seconds that they know that you believe them. This is not, we're not dismissing this. We're here for a reason and there is an actual problem. So many times now, people are rushing. They're trying to get right to the answers, right to the solution, right to the final. And a lot of people don't want that right off the bat. They want to be heard. There's a lot of names for it, right? And I'm going to pull from all kinds of existing terminology that this is one of the things I do is I just absorb these things and then I repeat them as if it's mine. And so anyway, so things like active listening, there's entire classes on active listening. We've all been active listening our entire lives. At some point in our lives, we stop doing that though. We've got too much going on in our own heads. We're putting our own biases, we're putting our own stereotypes, we're putting our own whatever we've got going on. We've got something that happened that morning that's distracting us, something we know that's happening this afternoon that's distracting us. So if you have nothing else going into a meeting with a customer, go into it and show them that you believe them and you're there and you're authentically present and you are actively listening to what they are saying, take notes, etc. Show them, repeat back very quickly. Like the very first impressions are made within the first few seconds, right? So grab all of that and make sure that you repeat bits of that back because you believe them. I mean, I do. That's actually the secret of my success is when I'm in those calls, when I'm in those meetings, I'm fully there 100%. Nothing else sort of exists. So believe them and show them that you believe them.
That's really fascinating because we're talking about kind of prepping for a meeting and then having the meeting and building that goodwill and that empathy and those personal relationships. Once you leave that room, what are the kind of milestones or things you put in place to maintain all of that hard work you've put in?
So I take lots of notes. When I'm in the meeting itself, because I'm so fully invested, I'm so there, I do have a tendency, and this is going to sound wild, but whatever. I do have a tendency to sort of blank out and I'll get out of it and I'll come back to being my own self outside of the meeting, which is not always 100% in it, right? In what they were thinking at that moment. So I do need to take a lot of notes in the meeting itself and make sure that you are writing it from their perspective. So not your first person, but a third person in a way. It's almost like embodying that, right? So you want to take notes in that. Yeah, that I don't remember the literature, the term in literature, but there's a first person, third person, and there's almost these second hand person something kind of names for it. But you want to take your notes in that, so either typing or writing physically, whatever you need to do, because when you get out of that, you're going to be back in a world where the product is obviously not doing something that they want it to do. It could be a feature, it could be a bug, something is wrong. That's why we're here, right? Well, wrong might be too hard of a word, but the product is not doing something that they want it to do, right? And if you go back in, and again, I tend to really, really embody it when I'm doing this, I will then go out and start talking to the product managers, the engineers working on it, the other support folks, whomever, and I will probably slightly slip into that mindset then, right? If you're like me, you definitely will. But you have to hold on to the mindset and the view of it, the perspective from the customer. So I've written my notes in their perspective. I have that. I can continue to go back into that because at that point, I'm going to figure out, because again, I'm usually in day 2, meaning product has already been installed, implemented, etc. I'm working with a customer who's usually having a challenge with it. They need a new feature, something like that. I just want to level set like where I usually am in the process. I think we can back into some of the pre before it's installed, etc. But right now that's where my headspace is. So I come back out after the meeting and I'm reviewing my notes. I'm figuring out, okay, who are the people within my organization that either need to know what it is that the customer really needs out of the product, and how do I then find out what their motivations, did they set this product up to do something, there's features in it for a reason, like really good, and I'm sure they did. Most people are not just throwing things at a wall. So why is there a gap between what the customer is telling me they need the product to do and what the product is actually doing, right? Why does that gap exist? Is it because they didn't know, they don't know it already does that? Is there an actual bug? Is there a better way? Or is there a workaround? Is there like what really truly, there's 1,000 things and there's entire books written on this. What is it that is causing that gap, that difference? And the customer told you. And again, we believe them, right? The customer told us exactly what they want. Is it what they want is not physically possible? It's not the direction of the company's product. Is all of those kinds of things come after, right? So we got to sit down, we've got to identify. And you can do that. This is not something I don't think that's impossible. But then what do you do with that? So we get to the next step. Okay, we've identified that there is a feature that the customer needs to get the thing done. So then you go to the folks that, bless and approve the new features and you build that out. Or is it a bug? Is it supposed to do that, but it doesn't do it? Let's go even fuzzier, because this is where a lot of my world lives. Is it supposed to do that, but it doesn't do it exactly as the customer wants? So do we go back to the customer and we explain, well, it's not exactly what you were looking for, but we can get real close. So that, I think, where it comes into figuring out what they say they need versus what exists versus what we can actually do. And again, you'll not hear me use the words figuring out what they think they need or what they said they need or what. No, I use none of that. They tell you exactly what they need. Customers tell you exactly what they need all the time. It's our responsibility to figure out if the product can do it, if we want it to, if we don't, what that means to us to physically enable that, whatever that is.
You might have one person at a customer telling you one thing, and you've
Yes.
given us a lot of really good insights into what you would do with that. How do you know that that actually represents the entire customer? Because you and I both know that on a customer site, that's a lot of people. That's a complex organization at times, and there may be differences in opinions and what they want to accomplish with the solution. So how do you kind of level set there and understand that the person you're talking to is speaking more for the organization and less for themselves, or maybe they are speaking more for themselves and less for the org? How would you go about trying to distill that out?
So this is where it gets real deep. People have tells. So if you you find out from somebody at your organization or yourself has to know going in, there has to be a reason that we're going in and talking to the people that are right in front of us, right? So you have to figure out real quick, are those the people that are making the decision for the whole org or just for them personally? I don't know. People have all kinds of different reasons for saying things that they say, right? So there's tell. So if you start having the conversation and they are coming from an emotional place, or they're coming from a deep technical, like they almost want to prove that they know about the technology. Like, I know about this and I need you to know that I know about this. All of those mean something in my head. And again, a lot of this I do almost innately. It's just this natural thing I do now. So it's kind of hard for me to articulate. Forgive me. So I can tell somehow, and I'll just keep talking and we'll figure out how I can tell. When people they've got a bugbear, whatever it's called, when it's just their individual, like, this has been driving me nuts for many years, and they don't really show with their words or their actions that it's something that they see affecting the rest of the organization, or if it's just them. Like, is that their thing? Oh, God, this is, this is what I've got to get done. Usually I don't run into that anymore. I used to run into that a long time ago. But at this point, the folks in your organization, they've gotten you in front of folks that they think are the ones, right? They're the ones making the decisions. Usually this is done before, hopefully. Hopefully you're lucky and it's done before you get there. But if you're not, you have a conversation with them about where they're coming from. Just take a moment. Hopefully you can go have a cup of coffee and you can just chill out with folks. That's the best way. Just go get a sandwich and find out where they're coming from. People's titles are not always what they actually do in the company. And people's titles don't really show where they influence the company. Right. So you can find that out by having that particular kind of conversation. Direct questions to, how long you been here? How long have you been at this one? Oh, you were at that one before. Oh, how was that? Do you know so-and-so from the other one? Like go through into, I'm not trying to name companies right now, but I do a little bit of that. Where are they coming from? If you get names, if they mention anybody else in their company, write that down. You're always writing that down. Make sure you have that long list and then go out. I mean, this requires a lot of time and effort, but I'm assuming that folks have, if you're going to this kind of level, you have a little bit more time than, half an hour on the phone with them. If you have a half an hour on the phone with them, you really just got to go with the title. What does their title say? Is that a person who, because, and not just superficially, but if they have a title that, in the industry that you're in every industry, the titles mean totally different things. You got to keep that in mind. There are vice presidents in one industry that are the equivalent to a senior sysadmin in another industry. Okay. So this is, again, things you pick up as you go through this for 20 years. If you are meeting folks with particular titles that by default have that, if you get in, have that gravitas, have that influence, et cetera, that's fine. If you get in and you're working with a bunch of folks where the titles, you have a half an hour to figure it out real fast, the titles don't match with what in that industry are the important ones, well, then you collect whatever info you can from that person and then you politely ask. There's all kinds of tools to find people across org charts, right? And you just don't waste anybody's time. We're believing them. We're not wasting their time. We're being very respectful and we're moving on.
How do you identify? So you mentioned there that titles don't necessarily equate to influence in an organization. If you're trying to get something done because you're serving that org, but you're talking to not quite the right person, how do you identify the points of influence that you need? Do you just recognize the titles, or is there more to it than that?
Well, if you only have a few minutes, then you have to recognize the title. You just have to do the titles. But if you've been lucky and you have a few days, a few weeks, a few months, in certain cases I've had a few years to see how they interact with others in their organization. And then you can track that down. I'm just very hyper aware of the way the people within the organization talk to each other. Again, this is the privileged. This is a privileged position where you have that time to do it. You can see after a little bit, either in emails, the way they interact with each other, in phone calls, any kind of input, any kind of medium that you can get input, right? If you don't have a lot of time, so that's if you have a lot of time, right? You see the way people interact with each other. You see when one person talks, how quickly somebody else reacts to an email. I'm getting deep, guys. This is going to sound a little pedantic, might be.
Times.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways. That's not the only one. There's 1,000 ways, but that's the first one on the top of my mind.
If you're getting super fast response times on email, what does that mean?
Well, that means one of the people cares deeply about what the other person thinks of them. Right. And thinks of their skill set. Yeah. And the hierarchy. So
there's somebody over here who never reads her email. Karl, please don't take it personally that it can take me 3 to 4 business weeks to respond to your emails.
She's not kidding about business weeks. I have to hit her on chat to actually get anything.
That's a great point. See, but this is actually a perfect example of what I'm talking about, because I've known Karl for a bit and I knew that he was an expert at email before. And Karl, I'm going to use you as an example right now because we know each other. Yep. I know for years that he was all about inbox zero and keeping that clean. I knew when he moved to the other organization he was in, it was all chat. And I know that because I was watching him and I'll lovingly say stalking him on socials, on some different social media, the LinkedIns and things. And so I saw what he was posting. So somehow, and this is what I'm talking about. it sounds a little insane, but I knew now his thing is chat. And so if he doesn't respond quickly to email, it's because that's not his thing anymore. People grow, people change. Oh, when you recognize that about one of your customers and you slip that in that you have noticed, they will tell you anything. You will know. Oh my gosh, like we're best friends now. You noticed, Jennifer, that I went from using email religiously, constantly, to using chat now. And now your marker or your way we're going to communicate is in chat. And that's where we are now. The fact that you listened and paid attention. Oh my gosh, it's like the star. People don't even realize, but the clouds part and everybody's best friends, right? Because you paid attention. You cared. We're constantly data overload, constantly so many things coming at us. Are we all by ourselves, or is anybody listening to me? As soon as you show a person that you are listening to them and that you care and that you believe them and the words that are coming out of their mouth are like actually useful, that you are going to learn so much more about whoever it is you're talking to. And so
those are great points, not just for dealing with customers, but for dealing with your fellow coworkers, for dealing with other teams inside your own organization. I mean, those are the types of points that are going to get you the furthest along in your relationships with the other people you're working with.
Yeah, it's so beyond. And now I started with know the technology, because you have to prove yourself all the time. In my world, you have to prove myself all the time. If people don't think I know the technology, they're not going to talk to me. Why would they talk to me? Come on. So we have to know the technology. That's number one, right? You have to, people are not going to talk to other people and go into detail about what they need and what they want if they think it's just going into a void. Because we do this all day. We go here, we go there, we talk to people. It's just kind of fluff, right? It's just out there. If a person shows them, if you hear somebody and you get this sense, maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not, that that person cares, that that person believes them, that that person has a bit of a background in that same sphere, in that same world, they're going to continue to talk to you. And you're going to figure out from where that person sits in their organization. You have to do your homework to figure out where the other people are in the organization. When I say do the homework, go talk to the other people in your organization and say, okay, so I talked to so-and-so. You talked to so-and-so, right? Did you talk to the other person in their org about this? And then you'll start to, oh yeah, but did they then connect you to this other person? Oh yeah, they did. Okay, but then were they the ones in the purchasing, or were they in the ones in the architecture group? Well, I thought they were in purchasing, but they really know a lot about it, so they must have been architecture. This is what I'm talking about. It just keeps going and going, and you start to build out who actually has the influence within the company, who is speaking for themselves, or who is speaking for a greater need across some systemic problem. I mean, something, right, that is causing issues. Karl, I just thought of 10 technical challenges around updating that we had a long time ago. I don't know if people want to hear about I don't know how technical we want to get, but Red Hat Enterprise Linux, there's about 50 different ways there have been in the last 20 years to update it.
This is true.
And inside of these large organizations that have 150,000 RHEL machines, there's about 750 different ways to update. And finding out from one team within one of the teams I worked with versus the architects who built some of the update systems, figuring out like what do they actually need, and then getting the architects to understand what their users actually need. And these are folks that don't want to talk to each other anymore. They're sick of talking to each other. So I will happily talk to all of them. I mean, this is what we did.
I think that that's a key point to make, though, because, there are so many different ways to update Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And why is that the case? That's the case because a lot of people said, I want to do it this way instead of this way. Mm-hmm. And, Red Hat definitely catered to a bunch of different customer types. But now you end up with a product that's there's too many ways to do a thing. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you from having been on the Red Hat Enterprise Linux PM team as my last role that I ran when I was in Red Hat, we were very much about trying to figure out how opinionated about how to do things in RHEL can we be? How much can we push people towards a particular way to do something? Because yes, there's 10 ways to do things. It confuses people. It's too much to have to choose from. Let's pick the most sane option or the most sane 2 or 3 options and try and be opinionated about these are the ways that you do the thing.
And then I come along and explain to you guys, but that's not actually how they wanted to do it.
When you're working with your internal teams, like you've had all this feedback from the customer, you've been active listening, you've figured out like what they need versus what they say they want. How do you bring the internal team along for that journey so that they prioritize and listen to you rather than their own bias?
I get on the phone, always get on the phone, or go in person, and I tell a story. Try not to make it too cheesy. Sometimes it happens. I take whatever that is that the customer has told me and I believe is their actual sincere problem, and I tell a story, try to add characters and the technology and make it relevant to carefully convince folks using the different ways I know that they have built their own, stories about the customer, the needs, or et cetera, and try to guide us all in the same way. So whatever it is that I'm working on is usually in that middle ground between like what the customer actually wants again and what our product is doing now. So there's a story somewhere in there about why does the customer need what they need? How did they get there? And sometimes the customer has told me that story and I just put my own flair on it, add some jokes, make it funny, keep it going. And then I tell that story again, and then I slightly tweak that story because usually you can't, if somebody has built something, it took years to build that product. We have to consider that. You can't walk in, and I've seen this happen over and over again. People walk in to talk to the software engineers, architects, the product managers, etc., and they think you can just, well, this is what the customer said. Yep. No, you have to go deep, way deeper than that. The customer took a long time to get to where they are. Why does that particular industry person, why are they there where they are? And then so respect that took that long, respect that it took that long to create that product in the way that it is now, and build a story in between those to bridge the gap between the natural tendency that folks who built this have to say, well, this is the best way. And you can kind of hear in Karl's last story about being more opinionated. Well, yes, definitely. You built this. This is important. You believe that is the right workflow or the right way to update something because of this massive amount of history and information and experiences. These experiences we have are why we built the product the way we built it, or whatever there's 1,000 reasons. I try to find out why the product manager or the engineer or whomever built whatever they built the way they built it. And some of this is too deep. Some of this, I work for a company that there's a lot of very passionate people that have that, like a real good internal knowledge. We're working on things that are open source, so they're totally free for the world. And so usually that comes with a little bit extra. It's not just a job. It's I believe in this, etc. And so you have to respect that. You're going in front of people that really believe. I had a lot of silly terms for that. Some of them are not exactly complimentary, but I'll move on. Because I'm the same, right? I'm a fangirl of Red Hat. I can't help myself. So you have to get in there and you have to figure out, and this takes a lot of time and effort. I believe. I mean, I have seen people go in and real quick say, customer wants that red button to be blue. Can you just make it blue and we move on? Usually that's not the level I'm at, though. Usually I'm at the level where we need to implement some IPv6 related thing that we should have, let's be honest, we should have implemented that a long time ago. Instead of saying to ourselves, why didn't we implement that a long time ago? You can't go in there with that attitude, because if you do, you're going to, people are going to shut down immediately. What? Do not assume. No. What are the reasons that we did not implement IPv6 in this way? There's reasons. Like ask, be curious, talk to the product manager, talk to the engineer. This, again, takes time, takes effort, takes a lot of energy. You got to take a lot of breaks, guys. Personal self-care, but you've got to do that, though. Right? Take a break, because you have to understand you can't convince people to change what they're doing and to spend time and effort and all that without somewhat showing them that you understand why they did what they did in the first place and where we are, and then why we have to change. And then you can't understand that the customer is actually telling you what exactly they want, and then how you can merge those and meet somewhere in the middle without, showing them also that you truly do care. So it really does come back to that over and over again to me. But then we need to go deeper into, how do you show you care? How do you actually care? How is this not just a job?
Do you find the same thing in reverse? So that answer was great. And I've definitely been on the receiving end of folks kind of telling me the story about how a customer interacts with the product that we're building and all of that. But when you're talking to a customer and you know that that's not the strategic direction of the product, or the thing that they're asking for is not going to happen, that doesn't align with the company's views of what should happen, how do you tell that story back to the customer so that they're satisfied and they don't churn and leave and get frustrated?
So you do have to figure out if you've already built that trust. You have to figure out if they already believe you somehow. So you have to have another conversation. You have to know when you're walking in or you're on the phone right off the bat, ask a few key questions, take the temperature. Again, it happens in the first 30 seconds. It's you have to shut everything else out. You have to pay attention. You can't be driving, you can't be paying attention to something else. Within the first few seconds, you've got to figure out, have you already built that trust, built that rapport, and now can we move on to the next step, which is then ahead of time, you've got to figure out, okay, we know this product is not going to do what the customer is asking for. Okay, we know that we know the best. We know the best way. We've got all this history. We've got all these reasons. How do I build the story in the reverse, right? So how do I say, well, what you do, you acknowledge from those notes that you took in their perspective that you understood what they were saying. You have to make sure they know, oh, I understand what you're saying. You can't just say it. You have to repeat it back in a way that's not robotic, not whatever. You got to, I understand this is what you need. And I'm not patronizing you, dear Lord. That's so many people keep patronizing each other. No more patronizing. You can't patronize me. Right? We feel that immediately.
Yeah,
that just tenses
totally.
up. No patronizing. Customer, I understand what it is that you asked me for. Here is all the background I did. I went from our call and I did all of this homework to try to figure out how to get that done exactly the way, because you told me what you needed. And I know you know what you need because this is your job. People are yelling at you all day to get this done. I understand. Or it's just your personal thing and you want to get it done, whatever. So
yeah.
I went and I did all this research, and these are the folks I talked to. You want to throw in a couple of good names, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta get some good titles in there. Everybody loves a good title. I know I just said titles don't matter. Sometimes they do. But you have to decide, is this a customer that cares about titles? Again, we're going deep.
Yep.
Is this a customer that cares about titles? Is it a customer that doesn't? If you know it's a customer that cares about titles, then you throw those in there. If you know they care more, that it doesn't matter. We need just the people that have been working on this product, etc. You tell them, I spent this amount of hours with these folks. Tell them. They do not take for granted that people know what you're doing. Nobody knows what you're doing. Nobody knows. You barely know what you're doing. You're just doing it, right? I just do this. So don't take for granted that people know.
I think you said the quiet part out loud just there.
I did say the quiet part out loud.
Oh no.
So you tell them, and then you get to the real, right? You tell them all of what has happened ahead of time, and then you get to the real, which is, this is what the product does, and this is why. This is why we built it the way we did. So this is the reality. This is not dreams. We're getting away from dreams now. I go and I tell people outright, I know what it is that you want. I know what it is right now that it does, and be brutally honest. This is what it does. Don't put a negative spin on it. It's what it does. It's reality. Reality is not good, bad, or otherwise. Reality is just reality. This is reality. Right now, we're in the now. We're practicing mindfulness, y'all. So this is the reality. And again, you got to figure out how to say it in a way that's not, oh my gosh, everything is terrible. Don't do that, but don't be too rainbows and butterflies either. You don't want to do too many, whatever. We don't want too many sparkles on it, too much glitter. There's somewhere in the middle that you have to find. And trust me, I've ruined that so many times. I've had a lot of people tell me over the years, you're so positive. It's so positive. I'm like, am I though? Am I really though? Or did I just tell you some bad news in a way that, you can spin anything. Let's be real. We can spin anything, because this is just the reality. I'm not making a judgment on it. There's lots of things. I'm going to get real deep because I've spent a lot of years, a lot of yoga, a lot of meditation, a lot of wandering in the woods by myself, a lot of that, which I highly recommend to everyone on this. Talk about self-care and just pausing and saying that exists. That's a thought. It's not good or it's not bad or it's not whatever. I'm bringing all of that when I come to this. This is serious. This is what I do, guys. And then you say, okay, so here is what I know that you need and that you want. This is what the reality is. And these are the reasons that we think this is the way that this should go, right? That this is, and sometimes that's it. The customer goes, I didn't think about it that way. Oh, because they're just thinking for the most part about what they need, what their wants are. There's some kind of pyramid about that. We got our Maslow's thing going on. That's all they're thinking. They didn't, oh, shoot, you just sort of slipped in there. And I'll say tricked because I like to use slightly subversive words sometimes. Well, you tricked them into understanding other people's perspective. And that's awesome, right? We're doing this both ways. We're doing this for ourselves, 3 different ways, customer and the product management. And they go, oh, okay. Oh, well, I didn't know. And you're like, well, how do you not know? There's product documentation. No. There's one thing reading product documentation. There's another thing internalizing it and seeing how that actually solves my problem, right? So then maybe we're done. You've now done all of your research. You've proven. You've built the respect. You've built the trust. You've built the authenticity. And maybe we're done, right? Or more likely, they say, but no, I still want. And so, okay. All right, so let me sit back. Okay, let's take a pause. Okay, so we know what the product does. We know the reality right now. We know what you need. And then you've got 1,000 more decisions to make. Have you noticed that every single step of this is 1,000 decisions and nothing's easy? Yeah, I have a tendency to do that with everything. It drives everybody a little crazy. But it's some of it, maybe this is some of my innate interest, curiosity, strive. I have an endless... I'm going to use some more terminology. Growth mindset. It's endless for me. I used to think all these different ways my whole life, and then I stumble upon other people have written books and named these things. Isn't that funny how that works? Wait a minute. I've just been doing that, and now you named it. You put a label on it. So that's what happens. And so we sit back and we say, okay, we've got a customer that needs a thing, and we've got a product that does a thing. And we've got a whole bunch of people behind that product that are like, this is the best way to do this. We've been doing this forever. Trust us. Do we keep going down the path of trying to get that customer to understand that, no, for real, this is in your best interest. You should use this one way. You should use satellite to update RHEL. You should. I know you're using, and there's a whole bunch of other competing products, but you should. And here's the reasons. You really, really should. Do we do that? Do we keep going? Or do we say, you know what? You've decided there's a different product. How can we work together with you on that? So in my world, I work with customers for years. That's just the technical account manager and then me having a team of them. We work together for years. So I have the luxury of being there for that interim period. We're still going to use the other way that still has challenges, that there's a whole bunch of features that are needed in RHEL or elsewhere because they're using this other way. We know that they could use satellite and it would solve all their problems, but they don't know that yet. We haven't gotten them there. That to me then is my failure. And I say failure lovingly. I don't say failure to mean I literally failed at my life. Oh my goodness, blah, blah. No, it's a temporary bump in the road. And I have 6 months. I have a year. I have sometimes years. So it's a little different than I understand a product management role or position would be in it. But I'm just telling you where I'm coming from. Hopefully you guys all get that spot, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, that's a really good explanation of why it really you ought to care about what you're doing and why the people that truly care and are passionate about things are going to be able to get in there and get the job done a lot better. Yeah. So I think, Danielle, you want to take the final question here?
Yeah, just a fun one. But you can take the day to do anything and be anywhere. How would you spend your time?
It changes every 15 minutes for me. But right now, I would love to be on a warm beach with that wind, that wind that wipes all the sound and the memories and the thoughts and everything out of your mind. And you have to be fully present. There's nothing else you can do when you have that kind of wind on that warm beach and you're looking at the ocean and it's going in and out. And there's nothing you can do. It's been taken away from you. All the decision making in the world has been taken away from you. You are on a beach.
Those thousands of decisions.
Sound, right? There's no more decisions.
Yeah.
There's no more overthinking everything. We're done. Because you have to do that also. And that's where I would like to be right now. Tomorrow would be somewhere else, but that is where right now. And it's this little chilly day we're having. So thank you.
Thank you. That was amazing. Karl, what did you think? What were your takeaways from the session?
I thought that was really good. I really liked the points where Jennifer talked about proving that you know the tech to be credible and that you're not wasting other people's time, coming prepared to the calls and coming prepared to conversations. I thought that was really, really good. And also I liked the point where she talked about telling a story about just the different people and the technology and considering and respecting the number of years it took for everybody to get to that point in their career to where you're actually having that conversation. I know that's something that's easy to forget when you're talking to somebody is how long have they been doing this? How much do they already know? And I think that it's probably easy for other people to forget that about us as well. It's not something that we all talk about normally when we get into these conversations. So it was really kind of poignant to hear that, yeah, these are things we definitely need to be thinking about. Danielle, what did you think?
Yeah, really similar. I loved those points, especially the consideration and respect. I think people often make decisions in tough environments. And so recognizing that they've lived that experience and you're coming in at the end or you're coming in towards the end of that journey is important to recognize. I also really liked the call out that when you're talking to customers, people have tells and you can try and figure out whether they're coming from an emotional perspective or a technical perspective and understanding motivations to really pull apart wants versus needs. And then when you're interacting with others, just to be really empathetic and to be truly authentic and to active listen, I think is just such an important takeaway in general when working with other team members and customers.
Yeah, so to wrap it all up, our call to action for this show will be to let us know the ways that you connect with people that you work with to better understand where they are coming from and what they really want to accomplish. This has been Productly Speaking.
Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, subscribe. Make sure you don't miss any episodes.
Also, share our podcast with your friends and anyone you think might enjoy listening to an American and a Brit natter on about product management.
I don't think you can call it nattering.
I guess actually we did stay on topic and it's not technically nattering.
Exactly. Well, what did you guys think? Leave us some feedback. Make sure to visit us at www.productlyspeaking.com. Send us an email at hello@productlyspeaking.com or join the chat on Matrix at #productlyspeaking:matrix.org. Thank you all again, and until next time, cheerio.